Imagine this. You're a mother of two. You've escaped a violent relationship. You've gone to the police. You've filed for a restraining order. You've begged the system for help. And then on the very same morning, you warn the world on Facebook that your ex is stalking you. Minutes later, you're gone. Shot dead in cold blood. This is not a horror movie. This is not fiction. This is the very real story of Mariah Samuels. She was 34. She was vibrant, loving, and protective of her children, and she did everything society tells victims to do. She spoke up. She filed reports. She got a restraining order. But on September 14, 2025, Mariah was ambushed in North Minneapolis, shot multiple times by the very men she was trying to escape, her ex-boyfriend, David Eugene Wright. And here's the chilling truth. Mariah's murder wasn't just the act of one man, it was the act of a system that failed her at every turn. Welcome back to Romance and Blood TV. In this video, we are going to uncover everything, the disturbing details of her abusive relationship, the protective order she fought for, and how it was ignored, the court filings, police reports, and failures that sealed her fate, and the chilling arrest of the man who admitted, in his own words, that jealousy drove him to murder. Stay with me because what you're about to hear will shock you, anger you, and force you to ask, how many more women must die before justice actually means protection? This is the story of Mariah Samuels, justice denied. Before we dive into the tragic details, let's step back, because if all you hear is that Mariah Samuels was killed, you'll miss who she really was. Mariah wasn't just another headline. She wasn't just another statistic in America's rising tide of domestic violence. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and most importantly, she was a mother of two beautiful children who adored her. Her friends describe her as vibrant, full of life, and always quick to laugh. Her family says she was fiercely protective, the kind of mom who would sacrifice anything for her children's happiness. Mariah loved simple things: movie nights, music that made her dance in the kitchen, long talks with her sisters, and weekends at the park with her kids. She was someone who lit up every room she entered, but she was also someone carrying a heavy weight, a weight she rarely showed in public. Like many women, Mariah's private life was far more complicated than it appeared on the surface. Behind her smile was a struggle, one that she tried again and again to escape. Those closest to her say she wanted nothing more than a peaceful life. She wanted safety. She wanted stability. And above all, she wanted to raise her children in a home filled with love, not fear. But that dream was stolen. And it was stolen by a man who once promised her love, then turned that love into obsession, violence, and ultimately murder. Now, before we get into how things went so horribly wrong, it's important to understand this. Mariah did everything right. She followed every step that victims are told will protect them. And that's why this case is so haunting, because her story isn't just about one man's brutality. It's about a system that had chance after chance to save her. And did end single quotes T.So who was Mariah Samuels? She was a woman of resilience, a mother who loved fiercely, a survivor who fought to protect herself and her children. And yet, despite her strength, despite her courage, she became the victim of a preventable tragedy. Her life deserves to be remembered not just for how it ended, but for how she lived. And as we continue, you'll see exactly why her story has shaken her community and the entire country to its core. Up next, we step into the shadows, the beginning of her relationship with David Eugene Wright, the man who would later take her life. The warning signs were there from the very start. And the truth is, those red flags were impossible to ignore. Now, who was David Eugene Wright? To the outside world, he seemed like just another man, but to Mariah, he would become a nightmare she could never fully escape. Their relationship started like many abusive ones do. At first, he was charming, attentive. He knew exactly what to say. For a while, Mariah believed she'd found someone who cared, but slowly, bit by bit, that love turned into control. That control turned into threats, and those threats turned into violence. Court documents revealed chilling details. Mariah described Wright pistol whipping her. She told police he once pressed a gun to her head. She reported stalking, harassment, and endless threats. One of her own statements reads, "I don't feel safe. He follows me. He threatens me. He has a gun. And he's not afraid to use it. These aren't just red flags. These are flashing sirens. And still, nothing stopped him." Mariah did what survivors are told to do. She went to the police. She filed reports. She detailed the abuse. But here's the chilling truth. Those reports were never fully processed. In fact, investigators admitted later that at least one of her assault reports was never forwarded to the prosecutor's office for charging. Think about that. She cried out for help and her words were left sitting in a file, collecting dust, while her abuser roamed free. In August of 2025, weeks before her death, things escalated. Wright allegedly attacked Mariah again. He threatened her life. He threatened her family. This wasn't a man hiding his violence. He was bold, reckless. He knew the system wasn't stopping him and he acted like he was untouchable. So, Mariah did what any mother desperate for safety would do. On August 26, 2025, she filed for an order of protection, and it was granted. The document spelled it out. No contact, no threats, no stalking. Violate it, and you're breaking the law. But here's the heartbreaking part. What good is a piece of paper when the man holding a gun has already shown he doesn't care about laws? And Mariah knew it. In her final days, she told friends she didn't believe the restraining order was enough. She felt the system wasn't protecting her, and she was right. Because just weeks after filing for that order, just weeks after pleading for safety, David Wright would prove how powerless that piece of paper really was. This was not just an abusive relationship, this was a ticking time bomb. Mariah saw it. Her family saw it, everyone around her saw it. The only ones who seemed blind were the very people sworn to protect her. And that brings us to the morning of September 14th, 2025, the day everything Mariah feared came true, the day her cries for help became her final warning. What happened that morning will chill you to your core. Sunday morning, September 14th, 2025, for Mariah Samuels. It started like any other day. She got her kids ready. She checked her phone, but in the pit of her stomach, something wasn't right. She had felt it for weeks, the sense of being watched, followed, the fear that every corner she turned, her ex might be there, and that morning, her fear spilled onto Facebook. At 10:23 a.m., Mariah posted publicly about her ex-boyfriend stalking her. She made it clear the restraining order wasn't enough. She was in danger. It was a desperate cry for help to anyone who would listen, but just minutes later her worst fear came true. According to investigators, Wright found Mariah near her car in North Minneapolis. Witnesses reported hearing shouting, then a series of rapid gunshots. Police would later recover 15 shell casings from the scene. Her car was riddled with bullet holes. Mariah never stood a chance. Imagine it. Her children, robbed of their mother in an instant. Her family, getting the call that every family fears. And all of it happening just minutes after she begged the world to see her fear. Neighbors say the sound of gunfire shook them. Some ran outside only to find the horrifying aftermath. Others hid inside, too afraid to move. One witness told reporters, "We heard screaming, then silence. Then sirens. Too late." That's the phrase that echoes through this entire case. Too late to act on her reports. Too late to enforce her protection order. Too late to save her life. And here's the haunting part. Mariah's death wasn't just a sudden act of violence. It was the final step in a long chain of warning signs ignored by the system. From the reports that sat unprocessed.to the threats documented in her restraining order.to the chilling Facebook post that spelled it out in real time. He's stalking me. I'm not safe. This wasn't unpredictable. This wasn't unforeseeable. It was preventable. And when police finally caught up with David Eugene Wright, his words would leave everyone stunned. Not only did he confess, he admitted why he did it. And his reason, it was as cruel as cold, and as senseless as you can imagine. Up next, we break down the arrest, Wright's confession, and the chilling details of what he told police about why he killed Mariah. And I promise you, once you hear his words, you'll never forget them. After Mariah's murder, an entire community was left in shock, but police wasted no time hunting for the man everyone knew was responsible: her ex-boyfriend, David Eugene Wright. This wasn't a whodunit. The evidence and the motive were clear from the start. Police tracked Wright down within hours. He didn't resist. He didn't fight. In fact, his words were almost chillingly casual. Those were his exact words. "I'm not going to fight this situation. As if murdering the mother of two wasn't enough, he spoke like it was just another bad day. And then came the confession. According to the criminal complaint, Wright admitted that he shot Mariah out of jealousy. Yes, jealousy. He told investigators that the thought of her moving on, the idea of her living without him, drove him to pick up a gun and end her life. Not remorse. Not regret. Just pure, selfish, violent control. Think about that. A woman who begged for protection, a mother raising her children, and the man she once trusted, decided she didn't deserve to live simply because he couldn't handle losing her. Wright was formally charged with second-degree intentional murder. And because he was already a convicted felon who wasn't allowed to own a firearm, prosecutors also hit him with charges of illegal possession of a gun. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming. The protective order, the threats, documented in her statements, the Facebook post minutes before her death, the shell casings, and most damning of all, his own words, admitting what he did. But here's where the case takes a darker turn, because even though Wright was in custody, and even though charges were filed, the spotlight shifted. Not just on him, but on the system that let him get this far. Why wasn't Wright stopped sooner? Why weren't her reports acted on? Why was a violent man with a history of abuse free to stalk and murder her? These aren't just questions for the court. These are questions for law enforcement, for prosecutors, for the system that was supposed to protect Mariah, but didn't. Next, we're going to break down the protective order, the court filings, and the devastating mistakes that left Mariah unprotected, because the truth is, she did everything right. And still, the system failed her. Now, let's talk about the part of this case that makes people's blood boil, because Mariah Samuel didn't just tell people she was afraid of Wright. She filed the papers, went through the process, and did everything the justice system tells victims to do. And still, the system let her down. In the months leading up to her death, Mariah had a protective order against Wright. She told the courts she feared for her life. She told them about his violent past. She begged for distance. And what was Wright supposed to do under that order? Stay away. No contact. No harassment. No stalking. But Wright didn't care. He kept showing up. He kept reaching out. He kept making threats, and Mariah kept documenting it. She kept reporting it, filing after filing, statement after statement, court papers that now read like a countdown to tragedy. But Wright didn't care. He kept showing up. He kept reaching out. He kept making threats, and Mariah kept documenting it. She kept reporting it, filing after filing, statement after statement, court papers that now read like a countdown to tragedy. Those were her words, written, recorded, submitted to the courts. He threatened to kill me. So let me ask you, what more did she need to say? What more proof did they need? And yet, despite the warnings, Wright was not jailed. He was not monitored. No ankle bracelet. No special conditions. A protective order is only as strong as the system that enforces it, and in Mariah's case, that system failed completely. After her death, community members stood outside the courthouse holding signs that said, "She did everything right, and they're correct. She followed the rules. She sought legal protection. She trusted the courts, and the courts turned their backs." The truth is, this isn't just about Mariah. It's about every victim of domestic violence who files those papers, hoping a piece of paper will keep them alive. Too often, those papers end up being nothing more than paperwork filed after the funeral. The moment news of Mariah's murder broke, it spread like wildfire, and soon, the public's heartbreak turned into outrage, because here was a woman who did everything right and still ended up dead. Friends, family, and complete strangers gathered for vigils. Candles lit the night sky as people stood together, whispering Mariah's name, and across those vigils, one question echoed: how could this happen? Soon, it wasn't just mourning, it was movement. Outside the courthouse, crowds demanded accountability. Signs read, "Protect women," "Justice for Mariah," "Stop ignoring victims," and on social media, thousands of voices amplified the same message. Mariah did everything right. The system did everything wrong. Hashtags like #Justice for Mariah and #She did everything right trended as people across the country saw themselves or someone they loved in her story. Survivors of domestic violence began sharing their own experiences, stories of calling for help and being ignored, stories of orders for protection that were just words on paper. Mariah's case wasn't just one tragedy, it was a mirror held up to a broken system. And let's not forget, in the middle of all this outrage, 2 young children were left without their mother. While the world debated court filings and systemic failures, 2 kids lost the most important person in their lives. For them, this wasn't just news, this was their reality. The outrage grew so loud that lawmakers began facing pressure. Advocates called for reform, stronger enforcement of protective orders, harsher penalties for violations, and better monitoring of repeat offenders. Right. The message was clear. Mariah's death cannot be in vain, but will that pressure turn into real change? And what happens next for Wright, the man who confessed to killing Mariah Samuel? In the last part, we'll take a hard look at what's coming. The court battle, the sentencing fight, and the long road to justice. As the dust settles, one question remains. What happens next? David Eugene Wright now sits in jail, facing charges of second-degree intentional murder and illegal possession of a firearm. His trial will not just be about one act of violence, it will be about every warning sign ignored, every red flag dismissed, and every moment Mariah begged for protection and was denied. In the coming months, prosecutors will lay out their case, they will show the protective order, they will play his confession, they will present the evidence that proves what the world already knows. Wright murdered Mariah in cold blood, but the real battle will be in sentencing. Will he face the maximum? Will the court finally send the message that violence against women cannot and will not be tolerated? For Mariah's family, no sentence will bring her back, no courtroom verdict will erase the pain. 2 children will grow up without their mother, because the system didn't act fast enough. But justice, real justice, can mean ensuring no one else slips through the cracks the way she did. Justice means change. Mariah Samuel's story should never be forgotten. Her name should be remembered not only as a victim, but as a voice that forced a broken system to confront its failures. Because the truth is, every time the system ignores a victim's warning, another tragedy waits around the corner. So tonight, as we close this chapter, remember Mariah. Remember her strength, remember her warnings, and remember that she did everything right, and still, she was silenced. This is Romance and Blood TV. Comment, like, and subscribe to this channel for more uncovering cases like this. The fight now is for change for her children, and for every victim who deserves to be heard before it's too late.